Hey there, Abiding fam, and welcome to my brand new studio. My name is Kelsey Lee. If you are new here, I recently moved to our first home, and this is my studio space. Now, it is very much on purpose that I am in front of a blank wall just next to the one organized section of my studio, because behind me, behind the camera, is just pure chaos, just boxes and craft supplies and art, and things are literally exploding over on that side of the camera. So we're just gonna keep things over here, but in the future, I'm definitely going to be having some studio related videos coming your way. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you subscribe. For now though, we are gonna be talking about journaling and how to get started, specifically how to get started by choosing a notebook. That's one of the first steps we have to take when starting to journal, is just picking out what's going to be our journal. Where are we going to explore our creativity, document our lives, and get to know ourselves a little bit better? What pages will we be diving into? And I'm hoping by the end of this video, you will have a better idea of the best type of notebook for you and your journaling. And I'm very happy to share that today's video is sponsored by Skillshare. More on them in a little bit. All right, so you know that you want to start journaling, you know that you want a notebook to do it in, but you're not sure where to start. So I'm going to tell you, before you start diving into all of the potential notebook options available to you across the internet or in your local stores, I encourage you to take a little step back and think first about what exactly you want to do with this notebook. What type of journaling do you want to pursue? There are, in fact, so many different types of journaling, and I don't have time to cover all of them with you right now, but I'm very happy to share that I actually have an entire series on different types of journaling. So if you are new to journaling entirely, don't even know what type of journaling you want to do, I encourage you to watch that series. I'll have it linked up here in the cards. So I'm gonna go ahead and assume that you have watched that series or already have an idea of what type of journaling it is you want to do and now are ready to pick a notebook. The first thing that I recommend thinking about when choosing a notebook is the notebook size. When it comes to notebooks, size does matter. Notebooks come in a lot of different sizes, and they typically fall within a certain parameter of size that most notebook companies are using. So it makes it a little bit easier then when you're comparing notebooks across brands and styles. You can look for a specific size. So for example, there are minis, pockets, B6, A5, extra large. I recommend doing some additional research, but this is the general size guide you're going to use. Now, when it comes to actually picking between all of these different sizes, there are some questions that I recommend asking yourself. The first question is, am I new to journaling, and or do I find the blank page to be intimidating? If that is true, then I recommend going with a smaller size that you can more easily fill up and feel accomplished. Ask yourself if you're going to be using a lot of photos and ephemera and stickers. If you tend to use full-sized photos or lots of ephemera like I typically do in my creative journaling, then you're probably going to want to size up. I, for example, use a Moleskine extra large journal, which is even bigger than an A5, which tends to be a really common size journal for a lot of people. It's very popular in the bullet journal community. So if you're not sure where to start at all, going with something like an A5 or a B6 is probably a really good place to start. It's a nice medium-sized notebook. Other questions to ask when it comes to size are, am I planning to take this journal with me? Is it something that's primarily going to stay at home and in that case can be a little bit larger? Or is it something that I want to be able to just throw in my backpack or in a purse and take with me wherever I go? Being able to transport your notebook and easily take it with you definitely depends on the size. Another question you might not be thinking about when it comes to size is the journal cover. Now, not every notebook requires a journal cover, but if you are using something like a traveler's notebook, which is the system I tend to use, where you have multiple notebook inserts within one journal cover, you do want to consider the journal cover when picking your size, because certain journal cover sizes are more easily found, and also the higher you go in the size, the higher the price typically is, especially if you're looking at something like a leather notebook cover. You really want to take your budget into consideration if you're planning on getting a cover. But after you have finished answering all of those questions regarding the size of the notebook and you finally have landed on the size that you think is going to be the best for your notebook, you then have to think about the paper. But before we talk about the paper, I want to share with you a little bit more about Skillshare, because they are honestly one of the best resources to learn different ways to explore your creativity within your notebook. If you've been with me for a while, then you know how much I love Skillshare. They are an amazing online learning community. There are literally an endless number of courses with new ones being added all the time on so many different creative pursuits and skills. I know that we are a community full of people who have so many diverse creative passions, and you can literally find a class for every single one of them on Skillshare. There is watercolor, there is illustration, there is things related to interior design, and of course there are many courses on journaling. If you are new to journaling or just looking for some new ways to spice up your journaling if you've been doing it for a while, then you should really check out Skillshare. I personally am currently taking a class by our very own Helen Colebrook from Journal with Purpose in our community. She is fantastic, and she has a class on Skillshare all on gratitude journaling, which is something that I'm trying to get back into again. And so I've really been enjoying her course and would highly recommend that you check it out. If you want to take Helen's class for completely free for 1 month, check out my link in the description box and you will get access to that class completely free, plus literally every other class available on Skillshare. I can't wait to hear from you guys about all of the different things you are learning over on Skillshare. All right, so you know what type of journaling you want to do, you have your notebook size, and now it's time for the creme of the creme when it comes to journaling. That is what paper. Paper quality is so important for journaling. Possibly the biggest thing when it comes to paper quality is the paper weight. And paper weight is measured in GSM, or grams per square meter. I don't really know what all that means, but I do know that the higher the GSM, the heavier and thicker the paper is. So paper like your construction paper, watercolor paper, they're gonna have higher GSMs than papers like vellum, which is a thin translucent paper, or onion skin paper, which is kind of a fun paper that a lot of people have been getting into recently in the journaling community. There's a lot of different variations in paper weight, and you want to find one that is going to best suit your needs. Ask yourself, what mediums do I plan on using in my notebook, and what different pens do I typically like to use in my notebook? For example, if you are somebody who enjoys using a fountain pen like I have right here, then you want to make sure that the paper you are using is fountain pen compatible. And having a heavier weight does not necessarily mean that the paper is going to be fountain pen compatible, because fountain pen ink can also not only bleed or cause shadowing, but it also can cause feathering, where the ink, in the way that it absorbs into the paper, kind of creates like this branching effect that isn't going to look so great with your writing. So you want to make sure that your paper is going to be fountain pen compatible. if it's something that you are interested in using. And by the way, I do have a new video on a very beginner-friendly fountain pen if that is something that you're interested in learning about next. I'll put it up here in the cards. So yes, the paper weight matters, but also the paper absorbency. Is it going to be a paper that is going to absorb your ink and have quick dry time? Is smudging very likely because your ink sort of just sits on top of the paper if it has a protective coating? So make sure you're reading the reviews that will tell you a little bit more about the way that the paper is taking different inks, the way that it takes water if you're interested in doing watercolor, and whether it's something that is going to hold up to mixed media if that's something you want to do as well. The other consideration when it comes to the paper is the paper style. So you are probably familiar with just blank paper and lined paper, but there's actually other options as well. You also can find a grid style of paper, and also dot grid is extremely popular in the journaling community. And then the last thing you want to consider when it comes to paper is whether the pages have numbers or an index. If you are somebody who plans on using it as a bullet journal, for example, then you probably do want to have numbered pages and an index. If you are doing just mixed media collage and going into the notebook every now and then, you probably don't want or need numbered pages. So those are going to be your two most important considerations. You want to make sure that you have the right notebook size and the right paper quality for the type of journaling you want to do. But there's actually a lot of other considerations as well, and I'm going to try and go through these rapid fire so that you can get to picking out your notebook. But do stick with me because these are also really important considerations. One important thing to consider is how many pages does this journal have? What is the right number of pages for me? Maybe I'm somebody who wants to do daily journaling and literally have a page for every day, and so I'm looking for a journal that specifically has 365 pages. But maybe I also am somebody who thinks that's way too intimidating, and I rather go with a traveler's notebook system where I just have small inserts that are 30 to 60 pages each, and I can fill them up super quickly. Journals that have a lot of pages can also become a little bit difficult to manage, especially if you're doing more creative journaling where you're adding in a lot of other elements to it and creating a chunky monkey like my journals. If you want to do that kind of creative journaling, then I do recommend having notebooks with fewer pages that aren't going to bulk up as quickly, and that means you're not going to be having to deal with a mound of pages that are up like this when you get to the end and you're sort of like trying to create over here, especially if you're left-handed. It just, take it from me, not great when you're working with a really chunky journal. So try to go with smaller inserts if you're choosing to do a more creative style of journaling. Similarly, you want to consider the binding. Is this binding going to be stitched, which means it's probably going to last a lot longer? Stitched binding is something that is especially important, I think, if you are planning on these journals being a keepsake that you are passing down to others. But sometimes binding like that can get more expensive. Something else to consider is, does the journal lie flat? So important to me, especially as a lefty, because of the way that I write, but also just because it's a lot easier to create on a flat surface and not have to be fighting your journal to stay open while you're working in it. You want to think about, is the journal pretty? Because of course, we all like a pretty notebook. We want it to be something that we want to open again and again and return to. If you are curious where I get my gorgeous journal covers, they are from Documented Journey, and I do have an amazing discount code where you can get her covers for 10% off. And she is one of the rare few. If you are interested in extra large notebooks like I use, she honestly is probably one of like 2 sellers that I've ever found who actually make journal covers in this size. So I highly recommend Documented Journey for any notebook cover needs. check her out. So definitely consider the cover of the notebook in that regard, but you also want to think about the notebook in terms of the durability. Is it a hardcover notebook or a soft cover? Do you like the more floppy feel of a soft cover notebook, or do you want something that's going to be more durable like a hardcover? And then something else to think about that sort of goes hand in hand is the journal brand and the cost, and how you're balancing those two things. Sometimes the best notebook brands also have a higher cost because they have better quality. So you need to find the right balance for you. I personally think if you are really going to be serious about journaling and make it something that you are doing passionately and really enjoy, then it is worth the investment to go with a little bit higher. You don't need to go crazy. It doesn't need to be an absolutely ridiculously expensive journal, but do pick a brand that is semi-well-known and well-loved by the journaling community, like the Moleskine, the Leuchtturm. We all say it wrong.
Leuchtturm.
It's okay. You can enter the journaling community and not know how to pronounce Leuchtturm.
Leuchtturm.
None of us know how to pronounce it, I'm pretty convinced. Tomoe River paper, that's not necessarily a specific notebook brand, but it is something that a lot of people enjoy using. So maybe you're looking for a Hobonichi, which is a popular brand, or a Stalogy. These are just a few of the popular brands that I know of, and while you don't need to go with a popular brand, you do want to go with a high quality notebook, and you do want to pick something that if you fall in love with it, is likely to still be around when you're ready for your next notebook. So just make sure you're asking yourself when looking at a brand, does this brand have high customer satisfaction? Do others I know in the journaling community use this brand and love it? And finally, is this brand one that I think is going to stick around and is going to continue to sell these notebooks so I can return to them and get more for future journaling? And that brings me to my final point, which is ultimately the best notebook for your journal is the one that you are going to want to return to again and again, that you are going to love opening and getting to pour your soul into and get creative and document your life. You want a notebook that is going to make you want to journal. So while there are a lot of considerations, as I've just shared, for choosing the right notebook for you, you don't want to let the decision of picking the notebook stop you from actually getting to the practice of using the notebook. You want to get to the part where you actually get to journal. So don't let this decision overwhelm you. You can't really go wrong. Pick a notebook. If you find out that it's not one that you particularly love, use it and then try again, or regift it if you really, really don't like it. You can always get another notebook. Luckily, notebooks are not a crazy expensive thing. The best notebook is going to be the one that is in your hands and ready to use. So even if that means going through your existing notebooks, I think all women, I'm pretty sure, all of us have just a stack of notebooks that we have acquired over time. Go through that stack and just pick one of the notebooks that's going to best match the style of journaling that you're going to be doing and get started. Just start. And hopefully you are starting in a notebook that is going to make you want to come back and start again. So I sincerely hope that this video has helped you to think through the many different considerations when choosing a notebook, and helps you to pick a notebook that becomes the journal that you cherish and love. If it did, then I would be so grateful if you gave this video a thumbs up, and let me know down in the comments. I want to know what notebook you ultimately chose for your journaling. Or if you've already been journaling for a while, let everybody in the Abiding fam know what your current favorite notebook is. I know I personally would love to hear the different brands, the different sizes that you tend to go for, what type of journaling do you do, and what notebook best suits that type of journaling for you. Let us all know, and we can all learn from each other. And if you want to continue that learning journey, then do check out Skillshare at the link below so that you can take a journaling class for completely free, in addition to several others for 1 month, and thank you to Skillshare for making this video possible. If you want even more ways to explore your creativity and document your life, then I encourage you to check out my latest video, or you can check out this playlist here on types of journaling, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Until then, keep exploring your abiding creativity and document a life abiding in faith, hope, and love.